G.I. Joe is G.I. Joe.
All right. Love the production guys behind the scenes. They always do a good job with the opening. Welcome to episode 3 of the Tribunal. That is right, episode 3. We made it through 3 weeks and no backlash, so we're rolling on good. But we decided episode 3, actually, this what happened. Somebody actually came to us and said there was a topic that they wanted to do, and we were like, no better person in the world to have on. So myself and Richard welcome Scott Solo from the Starlet Digest podcast. What's going on, Scott?
What's up, nerds? How you doing?
Doing all right. And as always, my better half down below. Richard, how you doing today, brother?
Man, living life, enjoying it. Excited about today's topic, actually.
Absolutely. It was a good one because you know what? If you bring up a topic too, you too may be here too. Scott, what was the topic that you brought up to us?
It was mail away Joes. So back in the day, you had opportunities that just aren't there anymore, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But before we go, we're going to let everyone know that this tribunal is now in session, and we are talking about Melloway Joes, and also be a point should the flag points return. That is a topic of contention that I think would help in the whole fan community getting interactiveness. So we'll talk about that later in the show. But first and everything, let's talk about the Melloway Joes. Now, let's just give a quick breakdown. What is anybody's first, real thoughts? When was the first time you saw the Melloway Joes?
Oh.
Is it something you participated in when you were younger? Let's go over our guest, Scott. Your first Melloway Joe thoughts.
My first mail away Joe thoughts. I want to say it was the Mobot was the first vehicle I ever got, and of course the inserts. You had the blueprints, and you had the little mail away. I think it was this guy right here, this particular mail away. And I'm like, what is this? And all of a sudden inside there was not only the hooded Cobra Commander, but also the Manta. You could get the Manta. So, and those were my first 2 mailaways. I actually sent off for the hooded Cobra Commander and the Manta pretty much at the same time. And I was having this conversation with my buddy Kevin yesterday. That's the one right there. I did the thing. There was the mail, the flag points, and you had the shipping and handling cost. I mailed it off, and I think 3 days later, I'm checking the mail every day after 3 days. And my mom was like, it's not going to come that soon. I'm like, but I got to get it. I need Cobra Commander. So yeah, that was my first experience with a mail away.
Yeah. Richard, your first experience.
Well, oddly enough, pretty much the exact same. My first mail away right there, the old hooded Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
Any of us that grew up with the comic books or the cartoons, this is the Cobra Commander we fell in love with. As cool as this one is, and that's the old Mickey Mouse one right there. As cool as this one is, something about this figure, which is what I think in Classified we're getting robbed of. But this figure this is Cobra Commander. This is how we saw Cobra Commander. This always felt like the leader of Cobra more than this, or even the armored one. This was, and to this day, is still one of my favorite action figures.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I just remember getting flag points, getting the little catalog on Melloway catalog of it, and putting it into the mail. I think it might have been maybe I think it was either Major Blood or one of the other ones, because I remember there was a couple of them, but I think it might have been Major Blood. But I know my brother and I, we were both big Joe fans. We collected them, and it was something where it's like the flag points was the main thing, because it almost made it seem like you got away with a little something. It's like there was a little extra benefit of you actually taking the Joes and clipping off those file points or flag points and making sure that you send it in. It was like, is it like really the same price, or really did they kind of give you just a tad bit enough of a discount? But if you think about all the Joes you bought, you really had paid for it like 3 or 4 times over.
Kind of, but if you look at some of those, it's specifically that one you showed for Cobra
I'll put that
Commander. Okay, so for Cobra Commander, it was $1 for the it was $1 for shipping and handling and 7 flag. So yes, that one indeed you did. But you look at some of the later ones, and you could 6 flag points and $3. You could get the HAL.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
That's
not
it.
2 flag points and $1.25, and you got the Manta. I mean,
Exactly.
it wasn't that far of a stretch. And later on, Hooded Cobra Commander was 3 flag points and $1.50.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool the way it kind of evolved too. That was part of the conversation I was having with my friend Kevin yesterday. Is where did they have all this stock? I mean, was it just overstock? Did they make extras for these mailaways? I only took advantage of very few. I never ordered any of the vehicles.
In some of the mailaways, there were variants. That's where you get the color variants, like the color variant you have with Serpentor and stuff like that. Those are
Rampage.
mailaways.
Yeah, Rampage was a mail away. Man, it was just crazy stuff.
I never thought about that till you brought it up right now, but there was different PNAPs, and maybe they were some of the stock, because in those days, again, everything to throw out something probably was a huge thing. They were like, how can we repurpose this? Well, we made it as saying it was a variant kind of mail away. It did kind of make sense and everything, instead of just getting rid of the stock. So if whoever the marketing person on that was pretty ingenious how they came up with it. And Richard, you just brought this up too, and one point just away from the mailaways is the Hooded Cobra Commander issue. And I've never seen the issue with it, because I know the ideology that people have brought onto it and the reason behind it. But to me, I think that only makes that character more hateable due to the real world aspects and things. So to me, if you truly want a villain, well, you make him at like a certain aspect of the real world that you're going to despise. Scott, do you feel the same way? Is there any controversy in that as well?
Honestly, okay. I think I will be real. Yeah, it's not like he's got a white pointy hood.
Exactly.
I think they're exaggerating the issue. It with the 25th anniversary and the modern era versions of Cobra Commander, it wasn't a problem. Suddenly in the current climate that we're in, which is a lot of it, I understand. Absolutely. I understand there's a lot of issues in the world that have been kind of just glossed over, but there are certain things, you kind of got to pick and choose your battles. I never looked at Cobra Commander having seen the cartoon and read the comic book since day one. I always looked at him as a used car salesman that, went bad after selling some Amway. He had a pyramid scheme. He wasn't a Ku Klux Klan member out there with the pitchforks and torches. He was genuinely a dude that just wanted to take over the world and use a pyramid scheme to do it. It was, I don't see the issue with having a modern Hooded Cobra Commander.
Yeah, I see it the same way, because we've evolved from what Cobra was. Like Cobra was a ruthless terrorist organization when we were kids, but then that disappeared and they became an evil corporation. So as an evil corporation, he's not going to represent what they're saying he's represent. Now, if they were still a terrorist group, maybe I'd get it, but still, it's not, like you said, it's not a white pointy hood. It's, there's not anything overly like, even in some ways that I envision, like when I do my custom Cobra Commanders, I do base it off of, we'll call him the little mustache man. I do base some of the look off of it, but just stylistically, militaristically, not because I think that's what Cobra Commander represents, but the uniform seems to fit the style for the terrorist organization, as opposed to now I also do him a little bit more in a suit where he's more corporate, because they are the evil corporate empire. Like that's what the evil is now. So I think it's just like, the problem is we were too far one way and we've swung the opposite way a little too far, and we need to just be in the middle where people can look at something and go, that's not what's intended. So
it's a balancing act. It's all a balance, you know?
Yeah, well,
How
since
about you,
the
Alex?
you know what? Hey, I think that to me it's not as big as deal. First of all, it's in a toy line.
Mhm.
Second of all, it's a fictional character. This is it's not like we're talking about anything that was like out of American literature or anything situation. It's basically a commercial product that gained, I think, the wrong form of I guess spotlighting.
Right.
It's not making and breaking the world. And if
Yeah.
the fans are really wanting to see that character evolve, then show them that you can evolve the character and do it in a way where you can have that character and bring the ideology away from the real world and let people know that this is something that was like interpreted. Because as a kid, I never saw it, and
Mhm.
and as I got older, I'm like, is that the main reason for that? That didn't make because on the other hand, you got characters in the Marvel universe that are all right. Where Baron Zemo has it, they never been a big deal. They actually put out a figure through the same company. It's
The
just
Red
DC's product.
Skull.
Red Skull.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's gonna be look. There's always some form of a character that is a bad actor. And you want to make sure that you bring that to the representation. And as long as you do it in a fictional point where this is evil and
Mhm.
this is good, I think it works itself out. You need the characters that you routinely do not like. That makes some great characters.
And on
So,
top of it, this hasn't become a problem until the last what 2-3 years.
Yeah.
The
uh,
character's over 40 years old.
yeah, I think it
Okay.
was the last decade that it really
Uh,
just became stupid when they went
well,
to
I mean,
film.
you had him with the 25th anniversary, and
They did.
they
Mhm.
didn't have a problem introducing those then.
Hmm.
It's just with this new line that you're getting it so much, and I think it's like I said, character been around for almost 40 years at that point, and now
Yeah,
you're deciding to have a problem with it. Like,
absolutely. Well, like I said
You
again, that's
realize though that
harder.
the 25th anniversary figures are now 18 years old. I
Yeah,
yeah,
mean,
actually, yeah, I
oh
did.
my god.
And I do have that Cobra Commander actually carded, so still,
Yep.
so, um, but
a
hey,
very
that's larger.
underrated line, by the way.
It
Very
is, it
underrated
is,
line.
it is. That's an issue that we'll let the fans debate down low. So put your comments in and everything. You want to see that character and the classic look return? Hey, vote with your voice. Let's if you want to see it back there, let the people know the power of bees that it definitely needs to come back. And while we're talking about the comebacks, look, if we got to talk about the Melloway figures, well, there's a Melloway figure that became supreme of the ball, and actually, oh yeah, yeah. See, there you go. We'll get the customs right there. Great custom figure, man,
That's awesome.
and great stand and everything. We're going to talk about the stands a little later on.
Documentation.
Uh, but yeah, the character that ruled it all, I think probably and in my opinion, I don't know about you guys, is probably the greatest Melloway character that's ever existed. And we're talking about Sergeant Slaughter. I
Oh, I thought you were gonna
remember
say William Perry. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
no, uh, he's there, but no, I remember Sergeant Slaughter. It was like a great campaign. First of all, if you've seen any of
Mhm.
the original Joe commercials and everything, I always love how they took it from like animation to real world. But this is like an actual full living embodiment. I think it's incredibly smart for a toy line to take a living embodiment and to go to the extreme of a wrestler and Sergeant Slaughter. The thinking behind that too, it just worked. What was you
Mhm.
guys' first impression on the Sergeant Slaughter and coming into the line?
I was in love
Honest,
with it.
go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely in love. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge wrestling fan,
Mhm.
so just bringing wrestling into the Joeverse was awesome. And the guy was just a marketing genius when it came to GI Joe. He was in professional, like he had stepped away from WWE at that point, strictly to do this licensing deal with Hasbro. The WWE wasn't going to allow him to do it. So he stepped away, went to AWA, who allowed him to do this, and to the point where he wore GI Joe tights to the ring to wrestle in, and he would do commercials and I mean, the guy was a marketing. Like, he was all they were all over the marketing with Sergeant Slaughter, and it was right when we were getting that Hogan peak in professional wrestling. So
Mhm.
wrestling became like it was everywhere. Hogan was getting on. was it Sports Illustrated on the time, and then they started giving it actual media and actual press for wrestling. It wasn't just some underground stuff that people knew about. And then you had this bringing the kids in, like it helped wrestling, it helped GI Joe. I mean, it was fun times.
Yeah. To be completely opposite from you, I am not and have never been a wrestling fan.
Okay.
And Sergeant Slaughter, to me, whenever he debuted and actually seeing a real guy on camera talking to me, talking to the audience with that signature voice, in the camo, in the tank top and all that, it was just kind of eye-opening. I'm like, who is this? He's the cartoon and the comic book and the action figure come to life. It was such a unique marketing strategy, for lack of better terms, right? It's how can you make GI Joe and make it real, right? And it was masterful the way they did it, and it actually made me look into wrestling, see that it's still not for me, but the character himself, I freaking love Sergeant Slaughter, and I will buy every Sergeant Slaughter that comes out.
Absolutely.
It's a great figure, great character, great guy, such a nice man too.
Yeah.
I've met him a couple times, and he is just, man, you kind of want to invite him over for a beer every time you have a conversation with the man. He's just cool.
Yeah. I remember he was at this last Geeking Out and out here in Southern California, I'd say about maybe 2 months ago. And the line was still around the building. And it was a mixture of young and old. And that was, he just crosses over. But to take a living embodiment of an individual and throw him into a toy line, and he was a very larger than life kind of figure. So it was in a way he was cartoony, but I remember that also not just getting Sergeant Slaughter, because my brother and I was like, wow, we got to get this character. But also the first time like he debuted in the comic book was huge, because it was like, is he gonna be in the book? And then when he shows up, you're like, wow. Again, I think this was one of the best toy marketing campaigns that I think any modern day, because there's certain characters like He-Man or something, they didn't really kind of have living embodiments, and when you did see them in the movies, maybe they weren't as good as the product that we had at home. He always made the product at home better.
Yeah.
And that's
the thing
rare.
is Sarge, like, just as a human being, I mean, he's older now and he's way smaller, but at that time, like, he was a larger than life guy. I mean, the guy's 6'5", he was like 250 pounds. I mean, he wasn't completely ripped like you saw in the cartoons, but he was a big, beefy guy. And like, if you met him at a wrestling show, or even back then, he was doing signings at stuff. Like, he would show up, and he was just a larger than life person. And like I said, you're bringing the wrestling world, which was skyrocketing at the time. And this is the height of cartoons when we got off school, so those are skyrocketing at that time. Like, it's like they hitched two perfect entities together to just blow this up. Something that they missed on with it, that they were trying to do with Rocky, but they couldn't to do.
Yeah. And I do have the Order of Battle with Rocky Balboa in it, and I was like, wow, this is gonna be huge. And to never have a toy, he's like, wow, they robbed us of that one.
It's such a bummer.
It was such an unfortunate miss, but I think that would obviously have been even huger, because you're talking on a world scale that Rocky was known.
But I bet Sergeant Slaughter was like, oh, good, I can hang on to this title I can hold on to this belt for just a little while longer, right? But the one thing I do feel like they missed out on with the action figure is his debut in the comics. He was wearing like full fatigues when he first appeared in the comics, and I always wanted that version of the figure, right? So I'm sure that with people like Fresh Monkey Fiction or somebody who makes these military characters, maybe we'll get something like that we could do a head swap on one day. That'd be kind of cool.
That you're absolutely right. But we move from that to I'd say probably the greatest next entry into a real world figure. And look, to use a Super Bowl champ and then to debut him in And I remember like that blew my brother and my mind out of the water when we saw like the animation. It's like, oh my god, it's the fridge, and I remember we ordered out. It's like, I don't care how much it costs, whatever the stakes is. But also the campaign that they did on this as well. They did a
Yeah.
great job. You They took essentially a football player. They put him in the Joe team. We never really saw him animated wise, other than the commercial. And then
Yeah.
there might have been maybe some form of issue why he couldn't be on to the animated show at the time.
I think at this point, because that was a 1987 release, and in that 87, by that time the cartoon was already done. It hadn't quite moved over to DIC yet. I think 86 is when the second season
Yeah.
of GI Joe ended. So I think he was just in that negative zone between the two different series where it didn't get made. But I'm right there with you, man. The minute I got this, I had to order them.
What about you, Richard? I know you do some custom fridges, but did you have this as a kid as well?
Oh, 100%. I still have it somewhere around here. And this is once again taking advantage of that pop culture era. Because what year was this? 87?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you figure 1986 is when the Bears won the Super Bowl. That's when they were doing, the Super Bowl shuffle.
Yep.
They were, the fridge was in every commercial known to man at the time. They're just hitching. Hasbro was hitching onto that pop culture, and the fridge did so much stuff with kids and kids charities, and he was all over helping kids. It was just a perfect mixture, and I had to have it. I'm not even a Bears fan, and I had to own
it. Well, I remember the thing that I loved about it too was, I come from a huge sports family, and it was because the fridge could go both ways. You can play offense and defense, and it was just one of those things to see him as an actual character in the campaign that they ran, and it was immediately one of those things. Like, I don't care what it's going to be, how it's going to cost. We're definitely getting ourselves a fridge. And again, I thought his color scheme was fantastic. I thought, like I said, again, sometimes when they try to real world application some characters in, it just doesn't work right. This fit into the lore, and they just did a great job. And he was a great walking around ambassador in the same way like the Sergeant Slaughter was. Didn't hear too many controversies from the guy. He just he always has a smile on his face. He seems extremely approachable. And yeah, we're gonna
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, we'll pull this down, and we'll get to see Richard's
put that back up there.
Hold that up one more time. There you go. There you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, and yet also his weaponry too. They very smart marketing and design work that went into that. I think that we don't appreciate that as much. And I know, Scott, that you do a lot of design work. We don't appreciate the magicry that goes into just bringing a character to life. But when you get all the things that symbiotically work, like how amazing is that? That's what that figure represents and embodies.
I agree, and a lot of the design work too. There was just something special about the 80's Joes, right? I mean, they're so iconic. You've got the explosions on a black background with that amazing artwork and the great work on the logos and all that, and the fact that they were able to, the fact that they haven't carried over with that until the recent retro line is a bit of a miss, but because I think they even did later on down the line. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. They brought in Roddy Piper, right? They brought him into another real world character into GI Joe, and those mailaways and those little touches into the real world that made it still feel like it was so realistic. It was awesome. It was a good time to be a kid, man.
Yeah. And I don't think they quite duplicated it well. What was
I have
that,
the
man?
custom Piper I did.
No,
I said
okay.
that one's in the house. I have the custom Piper I did too.
Nice.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job with, like I said, again, bringing in some of the bigger melloways, other than their actual IP creations, but to actually take living embodiment. Because again, people fail to realize that living embodiments, they not only show up at conventions, they're on talk shows, they're on it's incredibly smart how they did this. And I think that's why GI Joe is such a successful line, is because we saw it more in mainstream than I think most other lines that we did. And
Yeah.
it's again, I would love to see them settle situations with the family and actually do the fridge again, other than the great KS collectible version. Again, I think Bobby Valla, you may have to give him a little bit of credit too, because I think without Action Force doing Sergeant Slaughter, that would have renewed Hasbro's interest into doing it as well. So and plus also gives anytime you can get Sergeant Slaughters into the line of any line, it's great. But now, can we get the fridge back in? I hope we can, because that's something I'd love to see from the 3 3/4 inch to the 6-inch line. It would just be like a complete 360 for me life wise. So I'm hoping that can happen.
And that's the crazy thing. Like, that's literally the only fridge that we ever got. We never
Yeah.
got it for the 25th anniversary. We never got any other. All we got was that one mail away. Whereas, we've had Sergeant Slaughter in every iteration since then, including. Well, we didn't get him. We got the Slaughters. We got the Marauders. Sorry, they were not Slaughters Marauders, but we got the Marauders in the conventions. But they didn't have a deal with Sarge at the time.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate, because those figures are amazing. That's one of the best convention sets that was out there.
Yeah.
But like, I'd like to see them bring in some real applications, some real, whether it's an actor, a character, something like that, because you see customizers do it all the time. I've made custom Punishers for the GI Joe line. I've done both. I've done Mr. T for the Joe team, and I did B.A. Baracus for the Cobra team.
Nice.
I've done I did a wrestler, CM Punk, for the Cobra team, who basically
that makes sense.
In my world, who took over for Roddy Piper after Piper died.
Yeah.
There's just, it's always got a story, but there's so many applications you can do.
That actually makes me think, though. Okay, so you've got people like, where do you go for those real life characters, right? And I think, as much as I don't care for it, I think you still have to dive into that professional wrestling circuit for it, because these are living, they're essentially living action figures, right?
Yes.
There's no reason. I mean, there's lots of reasons why not, but I mean, you could do a John Cena as a Joe
100%.
character. You could do The Rock if you wanted to as a Cobra agent. You could do.
I mean, he's Roadblock.
Yeah, I know he was Roadblock, right? So, but there's a lot of different paths you can go here, but we're not talking The Rock as Roadblock. We're talking The Rock as The Rock, right? We're talking a real life character, that human becoming that character.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I think, and which is why I liked wrestling to begin with, is because they were comic book characters come to life.
Yeah.
The reason I made the CM Punk, number one, I'm a huge CM Punk fan, but you're talking about a guy who's got a Cobra symbol tattooed on his shoulder, and he's got the Arastakagi on his forearm. The guy, he's always said, like, he didn't really want to get into acting, but his dream role is to play a Dreadnought in a GI Joe movie.
Sold. Let's go. Right. He can be Torch. I'm down with that. That's awesome.
Well, they give him some time and everything, so I'm sure they're going to start bringing him back in. But Scott, you brought up
the problem with that is WWE's Mattel. So.
True. Well, yeah, that is. Yeah, you probably have to go to another organization or something for that to work itself out. But we're going to look at some of the, Scott, you so graciously scanned in some of these melloways, so we're going to take a look at some of these. And when you start looking at all the great items, and again, like we were talking earlier, I don't know if these were just like they overstocked and they were just trying to get away with excess supplies back in the days, but they always made sense whenever you saw because it would be a vehicle that would probably be like maybe 1 or 2 lines ago that would show up in the melloways, and you were like, oh man, I didn't get a chance to get that, or I just wanted an extra one. And I remember the APC was one that I don't know how popular that was on the shelf, because it was more like it was more of a Joe, like I guess
it's a figure carrier.
Yeah, figure carrier, exactly. Yeah, that was it. But it wasn't more of a vehicle, but it was represented on the animated show.
Yes, and it was an ingenious, right? If you're gonna, because before we had like the Darth Vader heads and stuff like that, which they're great, but here you actually had a vehicle that you could play with moving tires and all that, and it was designed to be a carrying case for your action figures. Brilliant, right?
And it floated. and it
Yeah,
floated.
It's really the only functional figure carrier there really is.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
we have other ones, but they don't hold as many figures. You know, you
Mhm.
had the what was that? The bone one from Masters Universe. It's like a little dinosaur that you
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I do
you
remember.
know, but like if you got figure carriers that had any practical use, they held like 5 or 6 figures in it. This held a
Yeah.
lot of figures. It was functional. It had weapon, like you can use them. And I owned like I think 3 of them when I was a
Yeah.
kid because they were cheap.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
were. They were. And the one aspect too is that it was in a smart design because the bumper in the back would pull out to be
It's a
your
handle.
like carrier, your handle to walk around. It was smart, yet it was also in the same way functional in the Joe world because you had seen it in the show and it was used in the show. So I think
Yeah.
that was always smart for me. But one of the
Another
go ahead.
I was gonna say another one on here that is just the one of the most absolutely brilliant marketing strategies was become a Joe. Here's the
Yes.
Steel Brigade. Here's
Yep.
the Steel Brigade. I remember filling that out, putting my name on it, sending it in, and I got a Scott Kruger, action Steel Brigade action figure.
Mhm.
That was just a brilliant marketing plan. And then there were like 7 different variations of that figure. Him and Stardust are both. There's so
Yeah.
many different variations of them. Good luck finding them all. But I mean, what a brilliant marketing plan, right? A
Oh yeah.
faceless character that could be you.
Yeah.
Look, I think anytime you can get the fans to like, engage in what you're doing and like they knew the marketing team in the 80s knew what they were doing. And
Mhm.
it was just a smart way of just getting people fan engagement back in the best of ways because you did see yourself as a Joe. They did a great job of representing everyone. So you could see everyone in line. You were like, "Oh yeah, I want to join GI Joe." It's like I'll take up that fight every day of the week. And I think it's smart how they continue to do it. I think the team now needs to take a little harten back to those eras and start thinking about how do we keep the fan engagement and keep because again, I don't know, like we have a form of negativity that's popped into the Joe community. It
Mhm.
wasn't when we were coming up.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe if there's a more of an embodiment of everyone's kind of like, involved in it, instead of a separate scenario that they try to do. Well, this is classified and this is no, embrace the 60s Joes, embrace the adventure team, embrace the real American hero. I think if they started doing that, you could decrease some of that. And I think actually, like I said again, they did it a couple of years. I know that didn't work too well because it seemed like it was the Hasbro cash grab when they tried to do the you could be a character, and they tried that in like with GI Joe Classified and Ghostbusters and everything. That didn't work. It didn't seem as genuine as it did as hey, you could be in Star Brigade. You could be
Mhm.
this or Steel Brigade. You could be this character. So I think
Yeah.
if they move back into that, I think that may help some of this as well. What's you guys' thoughts on that?
I think they've got the right team for it because the Joe classified team seems like first and foremost they're fans of the property,
Yeah.
which I know there's harkening back to the Star Wars aspect of it. It a lot with the Star Wars team. It feels like it's a job,
Yeah.
and they're on camera. They're talking about the product. You can tell there's not really a passion there from some of them. Some of them there
Mm.
are, but not all of them. Every person that sits down for the Joe live streams, it feels like they were raised with this. They know this. They live, breathe, and eat GI Joe. It just you can tell there's a passion there. And I think that's the right team to go back to a prior model that maybe could bring more people in, that could get people more involved with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
No.
think definitely the changings they've obviously had some changing the guard in the team over the last couple of years since it
Mhm.
was originally launched, and I think they've moved in the right direction. That's how we started getting the retro carded figures, getting away
Perfect.
from the Nerf guns and the over the top, based on a failed video game figures,
Hmm.
and getting more of the retro style, but yet sort of updated, which is what I
Yes.
think we need. I mean, everybody wants a retro style, but like I've always said, and I've said on this podcast before, like I love Quick Kick, but the fact that the man walked around in the snow shirtless with no shoes on is ridiculous.
It's just Well,
I
if
do it
was
every time it
yours,
snows.
would work.
You know, Dr. Mindbender is one of my favorite characters ever. I will go to the grave saying that, but the man looks like a pro wrestler that does nothing but crunches all day. Like, you're a doctor of what? Ab workouts, man. Like,
But he was a dentist. My
Like,
dentist doesn't look like that.
No,
right? I
no.
would just like to see, a more modern take on them where
Yeah.
it's more practical,
Mhm.
but still love those characters. I don't want their background changed. I just
Yeah.
like to see them a bit more modern.
Yeah, well, I've seen some of the pushes. Like I've seen like the Dial Tone has classic versions of like what he used to look like in 3 3/4. But then they did a very good job of modernizing him in the classified line as well. He's still familiar yet updated, and I think if you
Mhm.
can do the balance between the two, and
Yeah.
then you also got a chance to just completely retro him out with the retro line, which I think those are the smart ones. There are some fans that just want retro, just give
Right.
me the original looking guys, don't update them. And then there's guys that say, I just want a little bit of an update to it. So I think they have this sweet spot in between, you
And
know?
we got that with like with Firefly. You got the Firefly
Yes.
that's more of a modern,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
then we got and then you got the older release.
And then
we
you
did
got
get
the
that.
good one.
Yeah, we are getting that with Quick Kick. We
Yeah.
had the original Quick Kick come out. Now we're getting that. What is it? The Night
Night
Force
Force.
version of him. Where he's finally got a shirt and boots on.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
did that.
I love that character. Like, that figure looks awesome to me.
Yeah, I think they did that with was it the 50th anniversary? Because you know how they
Yeah.
did the 50th anniversary of him,
Yeah.
and he was kind of dressed like I think he was dressed like Bruce Lee. He had like the
Yeah, there was
sleeveless
a
shirt.
Yeah, they did.
it was
They
a
did.
Yeah.
part of the 2-pack ones.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was a really cool update for that
It
character.
was.
I like that. Yeah.
It was. Well, here's the thing that I love them to update, and this is one that I did actually have a mail away for when I was a
Oh
kid.
yeah.
The Manta. It's like basic, simple. I love how it was put together. We mailed away for this. I think we mailed away from 2 times. I'd like to see this actually pop back up as well. You guys' thoughts on the Manta?
I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, silly, and I absolutely loved it. It was like I said, it was the first one that I ordered.
Mhm.
A little, what is that thing? It's a windsurfer. It's a
Windsurfer.
windsurfing, yeah, and
Yeah.
it
With the
comes
gun.
apart completely, and yeah, with a machine gun, and it tucks into a backpack. How
Mhm.
cool is that? I mean,
Yeah.
why not? This is awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think and I think that this is where they're shooting for the moon with classified. Why look behind you, Alex? You've got your dragonfly. I
I
know
do.
Marco's
Yeah.
got the rattler, right? I've got the giant ass hiss tank right here.
Yep,
They
yep,
need
yep.
to scale it back a little bit, right? We do have the
Mhm.
flight pods and we've got a Cobra Claw coming, but give us more of these smaller vehicles that
Yeah.
don't have this massive footprint that still have some of that high fantasy adventure feel to them, right? Because this
Exactly.
feels straight out of Adventure Team right here. This is something
Yeah.
the Adventure Team would do.
That's 100% something myself and Alex keep saying on the show is
Mm.
those even the smaller play sets that we used to get,
Yes.
Mhm.
to bring those back, it would just be awesome. Something like this, obviously, we're probably, and if someone hasn't already, created
Oh, I'm
to
sure.
3D print this,
Yeah.
somebody will soon. This is such a simple, and don't get me wrong, it's absolutely ridiculous, but in the
No.
best way possible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool. Like, it doesn't matter how much you have to suspend disbelief to want. I want to play with this now, and I own one. I
Mhm.
just have to dig it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
The
I'm sorry.
real
Go
that's
ahead. Go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
if you're interested in those tiny the smaller play sets and all that,
Yeah.
you guys are probably in for a pretty good surprise come the SoCal Joe show. I
Oh,
might happen to know
all
that
right.
some stuff might be popping in there, and you might want to take a
Oh,
look around. Yeah.
Well, see, now
well,
that's the whole reason why you
I'll be
should
there.
actually
I have a booth.
travel down to Temecula and go to the SoCal Joe show, which is May
Mhm.
the 4th this year. Actually,
Ah,
so it's
yeah.
in the daytime, but I know
Yeah,
our
it's
Starlight buddies are doing something in the
May the
evening
4th, or as it's popularly known, GI Joe Day.
time.
Bite your tongue. That's
Well,
July 4th, man. That's just a couple months later.
uh,
That's actually very true.
True, true. That would actually work as well.
It
I don't
would.
think they would get a lot of people on that day though going to the SoCal Joe show. So the fourth has to be the point. But I was just gonna say too, they did do an update to this in the Sigma 6 line. That was kind of interesting. It's completely huge though.
Yeah.
Because the Sigma 6 line was very large, but they did kind of
Well,
update it a little bit. And I actually own that as well. And I thought, like,
Nice.
again, but
Sigma
I would
Sigma
love to
6
see
is
this in the classified line. Go ahead, Richard.
Sigma 6 is a very underappreciated line. They were the first, first
I agree.
dip into the 6-inch figures,
Hmm.
and sure they're a little wonky, a little weird, just like the
Yeah.
cartoon is more anime style. That's why a lot of people didn't like it. But I
Mhm.
absolutely love the Sigma 6 line. I love the cartoon. I think some, and now there are exceptions. Some of the figures are a little weird, but like some of the versions that they came out with, like there was a toxic Zartan that came out that is absolutely amazing. Their versions of Snake Eyes that they put out are really cool. Uh,
Mhm.
and I've noticed at doing a lot of Joe shows and stuff like that, there's a lot more appreciation towards that line coming out, because I think the people that grew up with that era of GI Joe are getting back into collecting. And like our era, the old, these puppies are kind of going away,
Mhm.
because people our age are kind of, they're either slimming down their collections, or they'll collect either 3 3/4 or the 6-inch. They're not going to do both, because we're in our 50s. I'm not going to spend money on both. So
Yeah.
the 3 3/4 kind of, and then we're seeing stuff like I said, like Sigma 6 become a little bit more popular all over again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say all over again, because I don't think it was ever popular.
Yeah, no, I think it was the least popular one, but no, what classified actually got me to go back into the retro line. So I'm actually collecting both. And I'm
Mhm.
I'm going back and diving into it because at one point when the classified came out, I thought, well, there's no way I'm gonna go through and collect all of the vintage stuff because it's gonna be a lifetime mission to do that.
Mhm.
And now I kind of like pick and choose, but now as I'm going to conventions now, I am looking for more retro stuff to actually co and blend with, like, some
Yeah.
of the classified stuff now. So
See, that's what the 25th anniversary stuff did for me, right? I had
mhm.
been kind of out of the GI Joe world for a while, and I'd pick up a figure here and there, like the Rattler or something like
Yeah.
that. And then the 25th anniversary line hit, and I was collecting them, and I really liked them, but they just didn't have. They were really nice, really hyper stylized, great
Yeah.
design, great articulation design, but they didn't have that nostalgia factor, and
Yes.
that was the O-rings, right?
Mhm.
So I could still boil them, pop them, and make my own figures, but it wasn't as easy as just unscrewing a screw and putting a different
Yeah.
torso on, right?
Mhm.
So I went back, and when the 25th anniversary line started, I went back and decided that was going to be my mission, to recollect the vintage GI Joe line, and I did it. I finished 82 to 94, all the figures, all the vehicles, and it took several years to get
Yeah.
it done, but it's like a crowning achievement, right? If you can call being a complete nerd and wasting all your money on a lot of plastic a crowning achievement, I win because
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
good at it. But it reawoke that nostalgia for GI Joe for me,
Yeah,
and
the 25th line absolutely did it for me too. I love the 25th, and what got me going back to the O-ring was a little bit different. It wasn't the lack of nostalgia. I hated that stupid arm peg. Like that, how
Oh,
that arm peg would
yeah.
always pop off. It bothered me, and I'm like, I never got that with the O-ring figures,
yeah.
and that's what kicked in the nostalgia for the O-rings, and I started going back down that rabbit hole. Then I collected pretty much. I got every figure I ever cared about, including maybe I went down a rabbit hole and bought 300 alley vipers and 286 bats.
Night
Maybe I
Viper.
did.
I
Maybe I
love the
did.
Night Viper.
Yeah, maybe I did. Dive down that pit a little bit too much, and now I'm really, really streamlining my what I have. But it was fun and it was good. I had lost my father at the time, and a lot of it was the nostalgia of
Yeah.
remembering him and him building the sets for me. So it it's it's amazing how connected GI Joe is to my youth and to
Yeah.
my life in general, even now. Like
Yeah.
some of the closest friends I have, I've met at Joe shows or in Facebook groups because of GI Joe. So
Yeah, and
Same.
I'll be honest with you. You and I wouldn't have met if it wasn't through a mutual friend by me going to a SoCal Joe show. So
yeah,
you
who I
know,
also
and
met at a Joe show.
yeah, exactly.
I
And
met Scott at the Joe show.
Yeah.
it's like,
My buddy Kevin and Dave Miller and Robert Lemoyne and Eben Foster and all these guys that put on the SoCal Joe show. I mean, they're great guys, and I would not have met any of them had it not been for the 25th anniversary line.
and
I
think that's
I met you before I even knew that you knew Justin, right?
oh, okay.
Yeah, because I went to high school with Justin, so yeah.
Yeah, I met because I remember
Such a
that,
small
and then
world.
and then it was like it's such a small world.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one aspect that I think people don't get is the live, especially the vintage shows. You know,
Yeah.
you'll walk in there, and I think like that's if you take one good thing about GI Joe happened to have such a representational thing with everyone that I think everyone gets along with one another. You don't see that until you go to an actual Joe show where you'll see young, old, whatever color of the rainbow that you might roll through. Everyone kind of gets along. There's always smiles on people's faces. I've seen like grown guys at Joe show hugging one another and everything. It's like, hey, brother. It just is one of those. It bases a very good thing in the community well, and it's something you definitely, if you haven't actually went to one, you should take the time, go to one because you're gonna enjoy it. And plus, you may walk away something that you didn't know you needed by the end of the day.
And the one thing that I've found that's unique to GI Joe, I wouldn't say it's completely unique, but it is something I don't see. Like there are fans out there that are strictly Star Trek fans. There are
Yes,
fans out there that are strictly Star Wars fans.
sure.
Or very few fans are strictly GI Joe. If they're into GI Joe, they're usually into other things. So you'll meet people at Joe shows, and they're into like every seller there. Nobody sells strictly GI Joe.
Sure.
They sell a little bit of everything, and it's because as collectors, most of us are. Most sellers started off as collectors. We collected more stuff, and I think for a lot of us, GI Joe was the beginning of collecting. And it's like you meet people that that collect so many different things. I was one of the few people at the time when I first started going to the SoCal Joe show that I knew that was into Mask. Now Mask is huge, and everybody's coming out and remembering how Mask was. There was one point at my store I had a huge Mask collection. I went through selling over and over. God knows.
Yeah.
I was constantly getting it, and it surprised me how many people remembered Mask. Same thing with Silverhawks. I had a huge Silverhawks collection that I kept. I went through most of my sellers and kind of depleted myself of being able to sell a lot of that stuff. But like these are things that weren't ultra popular when we were kids, but that nostalgia factor kicks in, and usually I'll meet those fans at Joe shows.
Yeah, sure.
You remember Visionaries?
I do remember it.
I love Visionaries, man. I'm missing one vehicle and I'll never get it because it's massive and it's like $1,000 for the stupid thing. But it's such a great line.
Yep, I remember Supernatural.
Absolutely.
Yep. So many great lines of the 80s and everything.
Oh,
and the one that I think that there'll be somehow, some way finding its way to us. I thought it was going to be with Starduster. It was the jump pad, which technically it did not come with Starduster. So I was a tad bit disappointed last year because I heard rumors that it was coming, but I think at one point we're going to get this.
We'll get it with the Silver Pads Grand Slam because that's what it came with the mail away.
That's what it's got to be. It's got to be.
Yeah. It should be. Yeah, absolutely. And there's another example of one that's not that big. It wouldn't have a huge footprint. It'd probably be 6 inches by 6 inches square. Yeah. And that's it, right? You could do some updating with the jetpack if you needed to, but absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was an amazing toy. It was like, I mean, I probably owned 2 or 3 of them when I was a kid. And they all broke, every one of them.
Well, this comes back to the reasonability of Joe's. It wasn't expensive to get the jump pack.
Well, just look right there. Three flag points and $2.
Yeah.
That's it. 3 flag points and $2, and you could have that with one of the most sought after action figures ever. That Silver Pads Grand Slam, right?
Oh, that thing is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always a regret that Grand Slam went to probably we probably blew him up or something. I'm sure.
The worst thing that ever happened to GI Joe was us as kids finding out that you could fit a firecracker in the bottom.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
most
how my Tauntaun died.
yeah, a
Well, with
lot of tauntauns
the cut stomach one.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things are super sought after.
Yeah. So
Yep.
since we're talking about actually also another great Melloway, which is one that I will say I never had because again, Richard knows the story. My mother would never let me eat the cereal. But
She didn't want you to cut the roof
Star
of your mouth.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, hey, I would have sacrificed for Starduster.
Yeah.
Like I said, did either one of you guys ever own Starduster from the cereal or
I
Go ahead.
I can't remember. I think I got it. You know what? I didn't get him until I was an adult. I don't think I had him
okay.
as a kid.
Same. I did not have them growing up. I think I've got I believe there's 6 different variations of this one. I think I have variant B that I bought in a collection. It just came
Mhm.
in a tray. I used to go to Frank and Sons a lot, and there was a guy down there named Roman, and Roman and I would trade all the time. And man, a lot of actually, I got my Terrordrome for designing a logo for his company.
Oh,
So
okay.
he needed a logo. I designed him a logo. He paid me in a Terrordrome. I come home with the Terrordrome, and my wife is like, "Yeah, that's totally better than money."
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, which
I mean,
but I got a lot of stuff like Starduster and yeah, I got this mail away right here in a trade with Rome, and it was the Night Force pack
Oh,
with
okay.
the and this has got let's see, it's got Repeater, Shockwave, and Fast Draw in there, and trades, man, those were great.
if it's the guy I'm thinking of, he was good for hunting down vehicle parts too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He had the little shop across the street from the original
Yep.
Frankenstein's. Yeah, the
Uh-huh.
obsessive collector. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's what I would spend all my money there instead of going into Frankenstein's.
same. I probably saw you there several times myself. Yeah,
Probably.
I'd spend hours there. I actually did some selling there once too. He let me set up a bunch of tables out in front, and I bought a TV with it. So good times.
Yeah, I used to go over there and help them when they would do the wrestling shows.
Yeah, because they put those in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those. Yep.
Well, like I said,
I
also
kind of
Scott,
wrestled there once.
we've got some stuff that Scott shared with us, which is some more of
Yeah.
these inserts and melloways. And I forgot about the dog tags. And then I saw this like you're right, they did have these. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had any, but I remember like, yeah, that was always something it was always the esteem to it. One day I'm gonna get my Joe dog tags.
Yeah.
I
I got one year I dressed up for Halloween as of all things Recondo. I wanted to be Recondo for
Mhm.
Halloween one year, so I had my Joe dog tags for those. So dumb.
Hey, you
Yeah,
know what? I dressed up when I was young. I dressed up as Stalker, which may have
yep.
seemed weird. The
He
one
was my
thing though
first
is
Joe.
mine too. I
Yeah.
always wanted these dog tags so bad,
Yeah.
but my father and my grandfather refused to let me get them because that's where they drew the line with any kind of cosplay or anything like that because they always told me they earned their dog tags and it's not something to
Mm,
be played with.
True.
So
True.
I
I
never
yeah.
got the GI Joe. To this, even when I had a chance to get them as an adult, I've never got them just because I was told that when I was a kid.
yeah. And see, I was a little bit different on the point. They didn't want to actually have those. It was like, my uncles would give me like their dog tags to wear, like the
Yeah,
Mhm.
real one. It's like,
yeah. I have my father's dog tags, like
yeah.
you know,
And it was
but
kind
they
of cool too because it's something about that the 70s metal that
mhm.
when you feel it, it does harken to it, and it's a little bit more of a responsibility to have it. But I remember they were like, if you're gonna wear a dog tag, wear a real dog tag. And they're
Yeah.
like, but it's still nice that because I know that so many people, I think also because of there were so many military references and everything, and I know this personally from a lot of family members, that's
Mhm.
why they enlisted was
Yeah.
because they had memories of like Joe's and situations, and they were like, "Look, I want to serve like that too." So I think that that actually harkened back, and it did such a great blend
Mhm.
of like not really kind of being as a recruiter commercial, but people look at that and say that's generally one of the reasons why I wanted to actually go into the military as well, which is
Oh yeah,
you know
a
great.
lot of it was bringing pride back to the military after the
Yes,
um the horrible view people had of it after the Vietnam War.
yeah,
Right.
And when it wasn't those soldiers' fault, whatever
yeah,
happened, whatever you believed, soldiers have nothing to do with it. They were just merely doing their job. And I
Yeah.
think part of bringing back GI Joe at that point was to take that stigma away. And
yes,
I have a cousin who became a firefighter because when he was a kid, barbecue was his favorite Joe.
yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. That's what I
Yeah.
said. Russell's a great
My
line.
my grandfather was a master sergeant in Vietnam. So, and afterwards, he retired in 74 or 75. I was one at his retirement party. But because of that military background, and my other grandfather was a colonel, no, major. He was a major in the Air Force. So,
Hmm.
because of the both sides of the family having heavily influence in the military, they never minded getting GI Joe stuff
Yes,
for me.
Yeah.
true.
But on the flip side, my grandfather, who he was actually in the middle of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, he told me that everything that he had experienced, he would never in a million years ever let me enlist in the military. He's like, I'll buy you as many GI Joes as you want, but I do not want you going into the military.
Yeah,
And
that was me. I was actually slated to join the military when I was 17. I went through all the testing and everything, and at the part I was taking care of my grandfather. My grandfather had Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of it, which has become more evident now, was due to Agent Orange. Like there was a lot of stuff, and when you're talking about a man who at the time was bare leg. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't bathe himself. Could barely form words, and he specifically said, "Do not join the military." So I never did.
Yeah,
This is a man who joined the military at 16 years old,
same.
and
Yeah.
did 4 tours in Vietnam while he was retired, and he told me not to join the military, so I listened.
Yeah.
Well, from that to the biggest point, and one of the things that we teased is in order to get all that mail away stuff, you needed one simple thing and one simple thing only, and it was a flag point. And we will pull this up on the screen. I know Scott's got some, but he's actually on the
Hmm.
card back. Um, the, the question of it is that I know that, like I said again, I remember a couple of years ago or a year ago, Bobby Valla in Action Force had brought back his action points and kind of did the mellow way for a stand for a figure that you needed flag or actually some form of point scheme from. Um, do you think that the GI Joe team currently today, the classified team, one, should they bring the flag points back? And two, are they wasting the opportunity to kind of like, I think, build good favor with having flag points?
I think yes to both right there. I think what a great way to okay, you could reinstitute the flag points and you
Hmm.
could do it with harder to find figures that are in the past, right? If you like the first release of Cobra Commander, which you could do a flag point system and order that, go back into those older figures that you don't want to mass manufacture and put them on pegs, but do them in smaller batches, limited supply, while supplies last kind of thing. And you could utilize Pulse for that too, right? There's
Yes.
a good way of marrying the idea of having a flag point and having some sort of an account with Pulse to where you could I don't know the math behind it or how to figure it out, but how to redeem those flag points online, right? To get
Hmm.
to get figures mailed away to you. I think there's something there. It just I haven't figured it out just yet, but I do think it is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a huge possibility, especially since I mean, let's be real. If even if something, say you're going to pay $10, we'll call it $10 shipping for a figure,
Hmm.
and we'll say 4 to 6 flag points is what they're going to charge you. Well,
Yeah.
Mhm.
each figure costs $25.
At least.
So they're more than getting their money for those figures. So they're not only are they making their money back. So you're talking about like you said, I think it's smartest to do it with maybe those rare figures or like that's an exclusive, a Comic-Con exclusive, but just release it with a different paint scheme. You know, a slight
with
variation.
no packaging at all. Just
Exactly.
put it
Old
in the
school
bag.
in a sealed bag.
Yep.
You know, and that way people can get their desired figures, and they don't think they're spending an arm and a leg because the figures they're buying for the points are figures they're going to get anyway.
They already spent the money. Yep.
So, and then you could also do it with smaller stuff and do like digital exclusives where they're able to get, you know, whatever. We live in a world of app games and apps and, you know, wallpapers and what have you. So there's a way to do it. Like they could develop an app card game that you play over your phone and you can get exclusives that way, or something that can be also bring in younger fans.
Exactly.
You know,
and I think there's a point of
so
hunting
much
something down.
possibilities with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think like the thing of hunting things down, and especially if it's maybe app version or something else like that, I think that would pull in a lot more of the younger fans. But we don't seem to have that problem as much anymore lately. Because again, I've been to several of these shows. I'm seeing more young fans show up to them than I've ever seen before, and that's the thing. And I'm not talking about like 15. I've seen them as small as like 7 and 8, like asking their father, like, "Yeah, can I have that?" So that's the good thing. I think it's starting to blend over, and I think Classified kind of helped that a little bit. I think it brought some attention back in that GI Joe didn't have, like, you know, the previous decade before, but now it's starting to see a little bit more of a resurgence of it. So, you know, we'll see
Or
what it is.
even if you go a different route with it, similar to like this old sucker right here. Speaking of
Yeah.
melee, the old club exclusives. Maybe you do something like that with flag points.
Yeah,
You know,
I would like to
Or
see
you-
the club come back. To be honest, I think a lot of
the GI
people
Joe
would.
Club was one of my favorite things ever, and I discovered it. You know, probably about I think a year and a half before it stopped.
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes.
But there were some amazing figures that came out, and just like you know, something like that where maybe you could join a GI Joe club and you use your points for whatever exclusives they have, even if it's weapon packs or, you know,
you use it to enroll in the club, and then you could purchase things from there. You know, doesn't even have to be use your points to purchase, right?
Right.
Just getting in the club.
What you're doing is like say you're getting a percentage off, and the way you're getting percentage off is by using your points.
Love it.
So you're getting a discount, but you're not really getting a discount because you paid for the figure.
Right.
So it's a win-win because you think you're getting a discount, but you're buying a figure you were going to buy anyway. So you're paying a little bit less for a figure you want also. And in the end, they're getting their money.
Sure.
You know, but the problem is we'd end up, the only figures they would have on there are like the Baroness and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow from the last Snake Eyes movie, right? It would be those figures that
well,
no.
There's an exclusive club. It's called the Ross Club. You can actually pick that still up. It is exclusive though. Well, like I said, again, we got some events coming up here pretty soon. And actually, we're recording this show before the March 18th date. So after this show, the next show will be Richard and myself actually recapping what was on the the fan stream that is going on. There's a little bit of ideas. I think there might be like, you know, I think we might see the claw come up. Maybe we'll see the Cobra armor. You know, there's a couple of things, some more
Snake
digital
armor
renders.
looks so good.
But looking forward to seeing that come up. So we'll do a recap of that. And again, like we suggested right here, you want to make some friends or maybe actually purchase some aspects, head to the SoCal Joe show on May the 4th, 2025 this year. And not only will you be able to see Richard, but you'll be able to see all of us from the SKN crew, because we will have a table and we will be live streaming from that actual event. So, you know,
And
come
you
on
could possibly
down.
go and purchase yourself a super soldier.
There you go. Yeah, you know, stay for the live stream. Buy from Richard.
Or even
And
something as cool as CM Punk is a GI Joe figure.
There you go. There's a whole lot of things. One
Nice.
aspect that we can do too is that if you didn't know, we've borrowed Mr. Scott Solo from the best damn Star Wars YouTube channel on, and it is the Sarlacc Digest podcast. Scott, give us a breakdown and let the Joe fans know what they actually should be doing in the galaxy far, far away on your YouTube channel.
Absolutely. So we're the Sarlacc Digest. We go live every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube. We also have our audio show that drops about a day later. Basically, what we do is we look at Star Wars, every aspect of Star Wars, from movies, TV, comic books, and we talk about it. We don't sugarcoat things, but we're also not overly negative about anything. We just try to keep it light, positive, and happy, which is, why hate everything that you love, right? So come to the Sarlacc Digest, enjoy as we digest those topics over 1,000 years. But wait, there's also the Sarlacc Toy Chest, which is every other Monday. And what we do is we talk specifically about Star Wars toys, be it vintage, modern, 6-inch, vintage collection, vehicles, you name it, we cover it. Mr. Storm right here, he's actually one of the co-hosts of that show. So it is a fun time. Again, we try to keep it positive, and I think in our next episode, which is probably already done by now, but you could catch on a replay, we're going to talk about, yes, it's the 30th anniversary of the Power of the Force 2 line. Can you believe it? 1995, those giant pecked Luke Skywalkers hit the shelves, and we're going to break that sucker down and talk about all the different long saber short trays and all that good crap. So again, that's every other Monday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, on right here on YouTube at the Sarlacc Digest channel. So check it out.
Absolutely. And if you don't know, one of the best figure stand companies out there is the Tashi Station Emporium. And you can see if you want some stands to go with your Joe characters, and I say probably the best stands to go there, you want to head over to TashiStationEmporium.com, and also some Star Wars stands and some Team and T stands and some, my man makes stands galore. But
He
if you're
does.
looking for something to pair with your Joes and your Cobras and your classified levels and your vintage, head over there and get that. But if you want to purchase something and you say, hey, I can't find that hard to find, Joe character I'm looking for, then you can demand down below right here, Richard over at kscollectibles.com. You can actually search, and he will get you stuff that, well, I can tell you all my Joe Honey needs goes from him, or either ask Scott Solo to head up to Walmart somewhere and get something. But
Yeah.
but you can find him there all the time, and actually at that SoCal Joe show, you'll see him as well. And not to mention also, because we want to let people know, May the 4th, you got a lot to do, not just in the city of Temecula. Scott, you guys got something planned in Apple Valley, California.
We do. Once you're done at the SoCal Joe show in Temecula, just go ahead and head up the 15, head up north, go to Apple Valley, California. We're going to have the Sarlacc Digest and the Better Days Bar are going to be putting on an all-day event. We're going to have trivia. It's going to be a trivia contest with prizes. It is a toy drive. So all we need is a toy priced $10 or more, still sealed up, nothing loose, no vintage. Don't bring, unless you want to bring me vintage. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But
what if it's still sealed in its vintage?
That definitely comes to me. I'll make sure it finds a good home. But no, seriously, it is a toy drive to benefit. We're thinking this year probably Chips for Kids, because a friend of mine actually runs Chips for Kids up here in the desert with Christopher Pine's dad. I forget his name. My bad. But yeah, so we're going to be donating to that great charity. It's, trying to bring joy and happiness and toys to kids' lives. And that's what it's all about. Right. So yeah, that's May 4th. It's a Sunday, May 4th. I think we're going to start the trivia at about 6 p.m. So
Okay.
Come on down, have a beer. There's going to be themed drinks. There's going to be food, all sorts of great stuff. There's going to be prizes for people in costume. Yeah, just come on up and have some Star Wars fun after your GI Joe fun in the morning.
Absolutely. So you can spend the day with Joe, end the day with Star Wars. Hey, there's no better way to celebrate the 4th on that. Come on.
We're
Right.
actually going to attempt. I'm actually going to attempt to make that trip. So
Oh,
That'd be amazing.
hopefully,
I know we will be making that trip. So there's a difference though. But that's great, man. Well, again, hey, like all things, our time is running out here. And unfortunately, I've got to let the panel know that this tribunal is now ending. So with that, make sure you catch on to the replay here on the Shadow Knows Network. And if you haven't done this by now, then shame on you. You should have subscribed. Subscribe, like, do all the good things. Head over to our social media as well, Shadow Knows Network on Instagram, X, and all the places where you can find your social media needs. And we'll see you next week and everything. But hey, Scott, thanks for coming by. Open invitation to join the tribunal anytime you want to, my friend.
Thank you,
And
buddy.
you can catch us over at Sorlac if it's today, actually, Monday.
A couple
We'll be
hours.
doing
Yeah.
that as well. So, guys, take it easy. We will see you the next time out.